Hi, people. I'm very happy to be here today having a conversation with Aakar Patel, who is always getting into trouble. Hi. It's hi.
Hi,
Hi, Aakar. How are you? He's
I'm
got,
very well.
well, you look like you're fine. But the fact is, Aakar, that you have had your Twitter disabled and then put on track again. I was one of those who protested loudly. You don't know about that. You have faced all sorts of cases. Your columns have been dropped. And I'm saying this because you were one of the most popular columnists in the country, because you were being published in mainstream, market driven publications where we do get read. I have also written in those publications sometimes. You were popular, you were irreverent. And another thing that people don't know, which I actually do know about you, because the first time I met you, Aakar, was in a very boring event in Bangalore. It was some
Yes,
culmination of some Bangalore festival where they had intellectual mites like Mohandas Pai and seven of us in one stage. And you said, let's get out of here. And you said, come over. And then I met you. And, it was a very pleasant thing. And you also told me about the book where you translated some work of Manto, which sort of
mm.
had me looking at you in a different way. So after this long introduction, Aakar, I'm just going to go over to you and say, how the hell did a Patel in India in this time get it so wrong?
So the thing about writing is that if you do it regularly, it's difficult to lie to yourself because you're trying to put down material every day, and whether that writing is in the form of a column or whether it's in the form of a book or if it's even a regular feed on Twitter, if you're committing your thoughts to script and to words, it's not easy to lie to yourself. And the fact is that we live in a time where it's impossible not to feel strongly about what is going on, in this country, what's happening to people that is being reported every day. And if one is to express it, if one were to express their anxieties, their anger, the fact is that you get into trouble. But that's the way it is. If you don't want to lie to yourself and you don't want to lie to the people who read you, you will get into trouble. And that's fine. I'm saying that if that's the price to pay, it has to be paid. Getting dropped is fine. I think that a lot of us have been dominating the same newspapers and the same pages for a very long time. And the fact is that having been given as long a run as I have is good enough for me. I don't have any problem with the publications that chose to drop me. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that it's difficult in our time to express dissent. It's always been tough in our part of the world. But I think now, in this time, it's become as close to impossible as it has ever been. And that's for a couple of reasons which we can talk about. But the good thing about it is that there are avenues available for expression in our time which didn't used to be available, say, 10, 15 years ago. So all is not lost.
So, I mean,
Janavi Baki hai thodi.
Aakar, avenues like especially right now, the print media is financially bust. So, of
Yes.
course, you and I, if we offer to write for any website, we'll get published. But they are not in a position to pay any longer. Let's be honest about it. And one of the reasons, they're not in a position. The great stuff is happening out there, but they have been financially, systematically assaulted.
So it's quite strange. I think, you and I, we are of a certain age where we've seen the transition where journalism's been very poorly paid. And then suddenly in the span of about maybe a decade or so, we were really well paid. And now suddenly again, it's come back to where it was in, say, the late 90s, where there's not enough money going around. There's not enough profits being made to be passed on. There's no shortage of talent, if that's the word required for a journalist. I don't think that's the word, but and so it's come back to where it was in the mid 90s, where we were basically making as much money as, say, somebody in the working class would be. My first salary was 1,700 rupees, and I thought that was a great salary, but it was definitely not the kind of living wage that journalists today might actually expect. And I suspect and I fear that those of us who work freelance have come back exactly to where we were 20, 25 years ago. Yeah.
Actually, Aakar, I always had a pathetic wage. I have a very strange story here because I was in Outlook for 15 years, which I loved.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
And I was miserably paid.
With a longer byline than you now have.
No. That was always a short byline in Outlook. That was India Today, okay? That was India Today. Huh? Outlook, I was miserably paid, okay? It's very strange, but when I left, my last job that I held in the media was political editor. When I left that is when I started to get well paid. I suddenly got a lot of columns, and I was being invited on television, and I was making damn sure I was paid, okay, for that.
Yeah.
Because I am a freelancer. So I actually made more money after leaving a regular job, because Outlook was, Vinod Mehta was considered a legendary editor, but he was very, very stingy with money.
He was, yes,
very stingy with money, but it was a delight to work there. I mean, the kind of stuff that I loved my 15 years over there, that time, But so then I was part of this TV sort of boom kind of thing, and it was fine. And I met you in Bangalore, and you turned around and you told me, why don't you learn how to monetize writing,
Yeah.
You said you had cracked it. And I said, I still don't know how to monetize writing, but I'm getting enough money from television. So, we had that kind of discussion. When you
should tell viewers what it is that people on TV get paid. So when I did TV, I've not done it in a while, but it would be between 2,000 and 5,000 rupees for that half an hour or 40 minutes that you were live. And then you were called live maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And sometimes during, let's say, if there was a general election coming or something like that, they would have a longer contract for 2 or 3 months, which would be about 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs. So that's the kind of money that people on TV get paid as guests. I don't know what it is these days. I'm talking of something like 5 years back. And political parties deployed people who presumably didn't take money or didn't get it, but the rest of us who would come on as talking heads would get that sort of money.
And TV worked very well for me, Aakar. By the time I left Outlook, my byline was established, but there was no recognition value. I'll be very honest about it upfront. I was signed up. I was called by Navika Kumar, who used to work under Arnab Goswami, and they signed me up for the 2012 Gujarat election campaign at a time when Outlook was barely able to pay its salaries. And Vinod was already on the way out, and we had a stand-in editor called Krishna Prasad, and he agreed to let me do the TV. And the money was larger and larger, so that's how I got the autonomy to do TV. It certainly, I will say one thing here, even though I have just recently stopped going to Times Now, and 2 years ago I stopped going to Arnab's show. TV worked for me for a long time, It certainly
worked in what sense?
when did Karnataka have its assembly election? It just, your byline, doesn't, I have written 4 books. I have written columns. I keep writing week after week. I have gone to party offices. I have done the very diligent kind of reporting, Aakar, where I covered the BJP day after day after day for years. I covered the Aam Aadmi Party's growth day after day. I used to go and cover their campaign. And I wrote a book about all of this. I have traveled all over India doing that book on syncretic cultures. For 2 years, I traveled all over. But you just appear on the idiot box a few times and you get stopped in airports and everybody stops and starts talking to you. And initially, I'm being very honest here, they used to stop and look at me and say, honestly, this is the truth. They say, Arnab Goswami. They didn't know who the hell I was. I was just a person that Arnab Goswami used to have in his shows. And Arnab Goswami in Times Now, when he dominated the English space, was not the Arnab Goswami of Republic. You could get in stories about Vyapam scam, about that woman who was stalked, and he did those pieces also. You know?
Did he do the stalking story?
Yes, he did the stalking story. Of course, he was always the Pakistan soldier Kashmir stuff was irrational, but he did in the political thing. He did all those stories.
How interesting. Not anymore. That's gone now.
Yeah, now it's gone. And times now, so it became impossible. And then just about 2 weeks ago, I had a very I'm just growing older. I couldn't take the more than anything else. It was just a regular show about the Delhi riots. But one of the panelists, he chose to attack me with gender stereotyping by saying she belongs to a kitty party gang and her manicured nails and this kind of bullshit, So,
but was he playing a character as he was meant to on that pantomime, or was he, was there a sense of meaning and a sense of hurt that was meant?
I think, look, I had been a bit evasive about going. But I go. I've covered the RSS. I've covered the BJP. I don't belong to that Puritan that I cannot talk to these people. Okay, I've covered everyone, so I go. I'm a journalist. That's the way I've been that reporter, hardcore reporter. I used to go, and it worked well for me. But it was it's actually gone berserk, even by the standards that I have watched it deteriorate. They have become obsessed with just night after night. It's become a trap where they want a few people and they want to encircle them. Lately, they tried to do that to Ajay Shukla, who's been writing about Kashmir, the Ladakh incursions, China.
Yes,
indeed. They tried to do that.
Yeah.
So the same Arnab Goswami, when I started going to Times Now, to his credit, I will say this, I was brought in there as a political analyst, not as a Muslim sitting there. I discussed elections, and I was well informed on them. I've interviewed prime ministers. I even knew Modi when he was a pracharak, as did you. At some point when he was in the Delhi party office. It's a long thing. To his credit, he didn't bring me out there as a Muslim. But as the narrative in India has just shifted to this pressing that Muslim button, the whole thing has just got messed up.
Do you sense there was a moment at which it shifted, or do you think it happened over a sort of relatively long, but in a chronological time, a short space of time? So, was it just a couple of years when it shifted, or was it like 5-10 years, or just like a month? When?
Listen, it's not, communalism was always there, okay? It's always there inside. But even the anchors were not so shameless, We always knew they had a formula that ek Musalman, make one Muslim sit here, make one Hindu sit there. That formula was there for years. Congress, BJP, Manmohan Singh, and have some Pakistani villain and have some Indian thing. But the point at which they decided to stop caring about the damage done to their own society, that I think has come with 2014.
And do you think that the content and the tenor and the sort of emotion with which it's pushed is done because of the fact that it plays out well with the audience, or is there another motive to it? Why is television so nasty in India, and why is it so communal, much more than print is?
I think it does play out well with the audience. And I think, Aakar, there's one thing which I did a column once, a very short one, in 2017, when the data rates in India became the cheapest in the world. There was a benchmark year. It came with the introduction of Jio. When people who just had a little phone, started to get data on the phone, the toxic elements of these talk shows were circulated over and over again. Now, this is particularly valid in places like UP and Bihar. You
mean through WhatsApp and things like that?
Yeah. Through WhatsApp. The little capsules would be made. You forget about, we in English, we are talking in English, we carry on about Arnab and Times Now. You have to see what the Hindi anchors say and do. You have to watch the real stuff that's consumed out there, So what they say and do is something which you have to hear.
But the national narrative is still controlled primarily by English. I think they are the ones that all the senior leaders come to, for whatever reason, whether it's economic or I mean, I don't know why. Maybe purely the fact that the middle class is still seen as the vanguard of Indian society, and to get them to shape what they think, you still need to do it through English rather than
You
through,
think
say,
so, right?
Hindi or Gujarati. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Well, South India is different. Like, I'll tell you one thing, like, because of the English channel, the last time I came to your city where you live, Bangalore, it was during the Karnataka elections. Now, was that 2 years ago? 2 years ago?
Something like that. Yeah.
So it's really hilarious because Bangalore is supposed to have all these troller spots, people who troll you. But then, as a BJP coverer, somebody who covers BJP, I also went to the BJP office and I met Shobha Karandike and I met other people. And there were people who wanted selfies with me in the BJP office in Bangalore, which doesn't happen in Lucknow and Patna, where they don't recognize me because they're watching Hindi TV. That is different. That I know the reporters in little towns. That's my terrain, right? So they took. It was a hilarious moment. There is Saba, Naqvi, the much abused journalist, taking selfies with pictures of Modi and all behind me by BJP workers in their briefing room in Bangalore. That's because of the reach of English television. Because they watch Times and they watch Arnab, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that English is much smaller in terms of total viewership, but much larger in terms of the geographical spread. You would have people north to south, east to west watching it, whereas Hindi would be concentrated in pockets, as would Gujarati and Tamil and so on. Yeah.
But Aakar, I have a question for you. Do you think that it's just the Hindi belt that's gone toxic and crazy, or has it also spread to the south?
I don't know if it's either gone toxic or it always was and it's now being made more toxic from the top down. I think that's one question. And the other question is but what do we mean by Hindi belt? Because Gujarat has been pretty nasty for a very long time. As long as I can remember, I'm 50 years old, so it's not as if I have a short memory. I worked there as a newspaper man in 2000. I left my job in 2005, I think. It was pretty nasty even then. So, and that's before the era of what we would consider to be, the kind of prime time nastiness which we see these days. It was slightly more subtle then. So, I don't know whether it is just Hindi, but certainly I can say that what we are seeing now, which is top-down, deliberate driving of division, is new. And it's happening because for the first time in our history, we've got an ideological state with a party that has a particular ideology that it calls Hindutva, which it wants to implement in the social field. We didn't have that. I mean, you would have Congress, communalism was opportunistic, that it would tolerate the riot because it would get some kind of benefit from it. It was rare for it to actually drive the riot. I think that the BJP is different in that sense, that they will pick up an issue and heat it up to the point where it causes deliberate violence in our society. The Babri Masjid being the largest example of that, but by no means the only one. Cattle slaughter is another. So they deliberately insert that debate into society. They stoke it through policy. And then they have their pimps in the media who are chosen to push it and paid to push it. And so this is new, I think, that where the government, the state, and the polity deliberately wants to divide India and to produce violence. The Delhi riots is the most recent example of it. And sadly, I don't think it will be the last time that we see the BJP playing mischief with its own.
Aakar, you also translated Narendra Modi's writings at one point, no?
So
languages? Gujarati, Urdu, English. Am I right? You have 3 languages. Are there more? You managed 3.
Well, I can speak a bit and read a bit of a few other languages, but not at the level where it would be called competent. I translated his essays. So when he was chief minister, he wrote a couple of books. One of those was a series of essays on those people in the RSS who had inspired him. So these were mostly Marathi Brahmins who moved from Pune or Nagpur and would set up a shakha somewhere in Gujarat and then would spend their lives, making no money at all, devoting themselves to building the neighborhood cadre and doing the sort of things that you do in a Shakha, which is essentially to arm a group of Hindus for the next communal riot. That's what the RSS Shakha does. And he wrote essays in admiration of these men, all of whom were dead. And I translated that, and that was published by First Post. I think it was 7-8 years ago or so. Yeah. So I did that. There was some poetry that he wrote that I also translated, but that was extremely ordinary and not very easy to translate. Not when it was easy, it was quite boring to translate. So at some point I just gave up.
So what do you?
That's the thing about him. Very few people realize that he doesn't read, that he has absolutely no reading. That in the books that he's written, there is one literary reference that I could find, which is Shakespeare's line about a rose being a rose. There's no other mention of any other book.
No, that's okay. Look, here's the question.
That's okay. There's a lovely interview
ask you
with
before in case this time runs out, because I'm really having fun with this conversation, Aakar, which is why I wanted to talk to you. Because the question is, Modi is an OBC, right? He's a backward caste figure. Are we therefore saying? But no. Are you saying? But that he's just. I have this theory that this entire Hindutva has just been the sort of displaced Brahmins of the north, waiting to the post-Mandal phase of politics. They have come back with Hindutva. They're in charge again. Be it Modi, it doesn't matter, because the RSS, they have come back. In this way, this is my very rudimentary theory, that there is no real spirit of OBC empowerment really in Prime Minister Modi. What would you say to that?
So 2-3 things. One is Mr. Modi is a recent OBC. He became OBC in 1999 under Mr. Vajpayee, when the community that he comes from was classified as being another backward class. Okay. Gujaratis would not consider his community to be backward. It's not. It's a very urban community. It's the community of oil pressers, what would be called Teli in the north. The people who run retail stores selling grain and oil. I'm not sure what the basis of the study was on which they were classified as being a OBC. But that is something we need to be mindful of. The other thing is that Mr. Modi doesn't himself project any of the OBC virtues. His own community is meat eating. It has a special fish dish that it has on a particular day of the year. He eschews it. Like a lot of the other Shudra in the BJP, they tend to take on almost Brahminical traits. My fellow Patidar in the BJP, Praveen Togadia, in the VHP, I should say. If you look at him, he's got a very Brahminical way of the way he dresses and all the kind of tilak and all. You can't make out that he's from a community of peasants, which he's from. So Mr. Modi is giving up meat, is taking on the kind of attributes that the RSS projects as being virtuous and Hindu. Tells us that he is either reluctant to show his a tribal identity, which I think he is, and I think it plays into the RSS thing of kind of unifying Hindus, but in the framework that the RSS will itself give, which is a kind of vegetarian, upper caste sort of a cultural thing. So I don't think it's OBC empowerment at all in the sense that you saw in Bihar or UP. It's different. And he certainly doesn't really represent it.
Okay. So, what do you see happening to people like you and me, Aakar? They're just going to go on. I mean, how do you?
So I think there are two aspects to this. I think if you're not particularly concerned about making money, which I'm not, so for me, losing some space to write on or whatever is not really that important. If you don't care about that, it is important to many people and maybe most people. If you don't care about that, then you've got many other options. The most important of them being obviously social media. Twitter tends to discriminate positively in favor of journalists. That you could be a very fine scientist, it would be very hard for you to get a blue tick. But if you were a reporter somewhere, it would be very easy for you to get recognized and get whatever that a blue tick signifies. So it's a good medium for the media, especially those of us who might want or to express themselves on what's going on and might not have a forum for it. I have stayed off it all this time because it's too much fun. It's addictive, and I knew that once I would start, I wouldn't be able to get myself out of it. So it's such an amazing tool that I kept myself off deliberately. But after my job ended last year, I had nothing much to do. So I took it on actively in January, and I'm really having a good time. It tends to get me into trouble, but then that's fine. What's life without a little trouble? You got into trouble yourself with Twitter. Why don't you?
Well, I try to be very. I'm not. I don't insult people the way you do, Aakar, but I'm threatened a lot because I'm just there with a Muslim name. How dare she? I'm just there.
Yeah.
So with me, I get insults like jihadi, and now I've become so immune to it. Like once, actually, I didn't even know I was being trolled till some years ago when somebody said, "Look what's written under your copy." We learn as we go along, And one of the words that's favorite, you'll be interested in this. They keep saying you porky.
Porky, yes, that's a nice one. Yeah.
They think
that's a conflation of pork eating and Pakistani. I think that's
porky. They carry on with that. So I get threatened, and Twitter has sent me that there has been some legal notice against me. I have these lawyer groups from UP who keep saying they're filing an FIR because I'm a liar. But nothing has happened so far. It's a regular ongoing thing on Twitter. But I think the things that they're taking seriously is the big riot. It's going to be on the Delhi riot that we're going to see a lot of falsehoods. Because they're manufacturing an entirely cooked up story right now in Delhi. So it's that that we're going to see a lot of. They've just let the guys who they've let all the hate speech people walk away, and they're just picking up a bunch of students. So we are seeing a great injustice here, but we both know what's happening. I just wanted to talk to you about, all our time is going to run out, and I believe this thing has a, so we know what is happening. So they are so let's see. Let me say one thing, Aakar. If they bother to shut you down, that means your voice counts. If they try to shut you
maybe we should tell viewers how this happens. So basically, what happens is that the police files an FIR. In my case, the police themselves file it, and they send a note to Delhi, and that note is then reviewed by a set of people in the union government who then make a recommendation to Twitter to put a hold on the account or to block them. So for Twitter to take you off can happen in one of two ways. One is that you violate the policies of Twitter itself. Maybe you choose to abuse or you upload something that you shouldn't have uploaded. The other way is that where the government tries to take you off. And in your case and in mine, it's been the government. The government has sent a note to Twitter saying we want these people off. And that, I think, speaks to what you just said, which is that they don't want these voices out. And the reason they don't want them out is because in some way these voices mean something to some people. And I think that that gives me a lot of hope that you don't have to rely on mainstream media to offer you a patronage. You can reach large numbers of people in some other ways as well.
Yeah, but it does bother me, Aakar, that I no longer, it's becoming so hard I love my writing. It's becoming so hard to get, because of the mass media. It's not about me, it's nothing. And
Well, I think that, I'm not sure why you're saying that, because, specifically for you, the place where you publish is no longer important because you've got 300,000, 400,000 people following you. You've got other people with their own large numbers of supporters who can broadcast the stuff that you send out and magnify it and amplify it. You can put up a blog on Facebook or somewhere else and you don't have to be in a newspaper. The fact is that newspaper subscriptions and readerships have all but collapsed. Other than the addition of prestige that has been published in this particular place, there is no other meaning to this thing.
Yeah. You're right. So you always, that's encouraging. That's why I'm doing a bit of this also. Also because
But
I
you
want,
don't get paid by Facebook, obviously. That's
yeah,
the
yeah,
other
I
difference.
do. I'm hoping someday somebody will, but I'm not going to kill myself over
Yeah.
it. This is going to be
Sure.
only because, there's another thing that I don't want to be part of. It's nothing. I find it
Yeah.
very tiring that you constantly have to project yourself. That sort of visual media does that to fantastic
Sure.
journalists. You have to constantly be on this race and say, that I don't know. I want to have a moment of reflection. I've done a lot of work
Yeah.
in my life, as have you. I've done books. I wanted to talk to you. It's just that I made something. I wanted to talk about George Orwell. I did it. So I've also enjoyed teaching this past year because I get along really well with young people. So I've enjoyed that also. Journalism. I'm talking about teaching journalism.
Not sure
And
they'll have jobs by the time they pass out.
it's not a job. I'm a visiting professor, but I'm still a journalist.
No, I'm not sure your students will have jobs waiting for them when they pass out.
Yeah. No, that everybody knows. Who has a job? People in the restaurant business don't have a job. It's not just journalism,
True.
But I have to say one thing. I mean, no matter how bad things are, it's been such a fabulously. It's never been boring. Yeah, people have such boring jobs. I mean, do you disagree?
Yes, I think many people might not know that while it was always poorly paid, journalism was always great fun. Where
Yeah.
you had access to people that others couldn't think about. I remember my father, like my parents were never kind of impressed with the kind of salary I made. But one day I called my father and I said that Dilip Kumar just called me. And I think that it's that sort of thing that used to make it great. You could just walk up to anybody and talk to them, which the others wouldn't be able to do. And you got a chance to do very basic things, which is have a conversation with somebody and then make a story out of it. It's not a skill that you need to be trained to do. It's just something that comes naturally to us as humans. And for such low skill work to be paid money and to meet such great people, what they are doing was totally fabulous. I hope those students of yours have something of a similar experience when they come out, and
they will.
I hope that there is
Some of them are
sort of
great,
media.
Aakar. Some of them are great, and they're just interested in what's happening. I think the main thing that drives us is curiosity, engagement. We care about things. I don't think journalism was never a profession to make money. I think some of us, it was never was. I mean, lucky for those who ended up making money, but I never did in that way.
There are
I've
some, but
enjoyed
there
my
are not
life,
many. For most of us, let's say if a newspaper employs 300 or 400 people, other than the top 3 or 4, most people would make a normal middle class wage. They would not make anywhere near the kind of money where it's
but it's a calling.
But it was fun.
It's been great fun even now. I mean, even in these dark times, look at us, Aakar. I mean, nobody is going to send these so-called trying to create these new intellectuals. Nobody cares about them actually. No one knows who they are except for the fact that they appear on TV. But they're still trying to shut you down. They every now and then tried a little bit of threatening me. They haven't done anything. I
think that has more to do with the fact that you and I and a lot of us express views that are not considered to be tolerable anymore. To say that we are a country where Muslims are being actively persecuted by the government is not tolerable. It is a fact. It's a fact that the world recognizes. In fact, the world even intervenes in a way that I haven't seen in the previous 25 years that I've been a journalist. That it's never happened that you've had countries write up reports about human rights violations in our country, and you have a lot of people inside this country support that report because it's true. If you persecute at these levels, you will have some kind of pushback. And if you and I and many of us say that this is the way we view it, even that view is not considered to be tolerable. That is where that's the kind of world we are in today.
Yeah, it's become that kind of.
But we don't stop, right? We carry on.
We carry on.
We get into trouble and we carry on.
We're gonna do this again. I hope, and I hope this comes off well because you're the. I hope it comes off well, and we can talk about other things also soon.
Sure.
They're always going to be, and you're always fun, and I love the way you just give it to them on Twitter. Just keep that going. Have fun. Okay.
Okay, you too. Bye bye.
Bye. Thanks so much. Bye.
Not at all. Ta-da.